Right, in this lesson, what we're going to look at is a essay, a 25-mark essay to do with the origins of Rome. Here's the title, write it out. Romulus shared more qualities with Tarquinius Superbus than any other king in the period 753 to 509 BC. How far do you agree with this view? It's a 20 marker plus 5 spag. It's very important we get these right. So, start off, let's remind ourselves. So have a look at this mind map. It's 1 and 2. Think about where Romulus comes from. Think about his brother, Remus, and the story of their childhood and the founding of Rome. Then here, what does Romulus do during his reign? Asylum, walls, the patrician client business, the orders, the Senate, the tribunes, centurion legions, the Roman religion. That's all the things that Romulus is said to have done during his reign as the first king of Rome. Remember, none of this is true. Then the last legendary king of Rome is Tarquinius Superbus. Here's a story of how he becomes king through a coup and an assassination of Servius. And what does he do as king? He's a tyrant. Yeah, he enslaves the plebs, doesn't allow religious ceremonies, won't allow Servius to be buried. He's the judge in capital crimes. Remember all this stuff? Got bodyguards, no Senate. To just remind yourself, spend a few minutes now looking back through your notes and reminding yourself about these two legendary kings. The first legendary king, Romulus, and the last legendary king, Tarquinius Superbus. So pause it here. So having gone through all that stuff, you should be ready to start an essay. You, of course, start with some sort of introduction. Who are they? When did they reign? Why are we studying them? Yeah, I'll give you 1 minute. Pause it here. So, here's what I would write. Romulus and Tarquinius Superbus were the two most famous of the legendary kings of Rome between 753 and 509 BC. Historians are confident that neither man really existed, but the Romans told these stories in order to explain how they came to be and went on to dominate Europe. Excuse me. That's your first paragraph. That's your introduction. Now your next paragraph is all about Romulus and how he becomes king. So pause it here and write up a paragraph for me about Romulus. So here's my version of that. Romulus was said to have been the son of the god of war, known to the Romans as Mars, and Rhea Silvia, the daughter of the king of Alba Longa. After an eventful and fictional childhood involving a twin, Remus, murder, and a she-wolf, he's said by the Romans to have founded Rome in April 753 BC on land given him by his grandfather. During the construction of Rome, he's said to have argued with his twin Remus and murdered him. This is called fratricide. So that would be my version of the paragraph about the basics of Romulus. Next, you want to do, well, what does Romulus do as king? Once he becomes king, what does he do? I'll pause it here and write up a paragraph about the achievements of Romulus. Here's what I would write. Upon the completion of Rome, he set up many of the institutions that later generations of Romans would recognize, such as the Senate, Asylum, the legions, and the orders, the patricians and the plebeians. Towards the end of his reign, he is said by some sources to have acted in a tyrannical fashion and was perhaps murdered by the Senate. However, in other stories, he was hit by lightning and became a god. It's called apotheosis. If a human becomes a god, it's called apotheosis. So next we move on to writing about Tarquin the Superb, Tarquinius Superbus. So please write me a paragraph about Tarquin, how he becomes king and what he does as king. Here's my version. Tarquinius Superbus was the final of the 7 legendary kings of Rome. He became king in 535 BC following his murder of the previous king Servius. Tarquinius was a tyrant throughout his reign, enslaving the plebeians to finish various construction projects like the Cloaca Maximus, the sewer, and the Circus Maximus, a stadium. He also did not consult the Senate and surrounded himself at all times with a large group of armed bodyguards. That's Tarquin. Right. Then you do me a paragraph, please, in the way these two kings are similar, and a paragraph on the way these two kings are different. So here's my version of it. As you can see, there are many similarities between these two kings. They both built major projects, they were both accused of tyranny, and they both changed Rome a great deal. However, in other ways, they are very different. Romulus brought Rome together while Tarquin divided it. Romulus listened to the Senate while Tarquin ignored it. Tarquin was exiled from Rome and became his greatest enemy, whilst Romulus was a great hero. In conclusion, what do you think? I do not think that Romulus and Tarquin were very similar. Now you do this essay here and you're going to score some decent marks, but you're not going to get anywhere near 25. You haven't really mentioned the sources, and it's a list. You've written about the two kings, how are they different, how are they similar. This would get you maybe 12, 13 out of 20, and all 5 marks are spark. So let's say 17 out of 25, a decent mark, but not what you've got to do to get closer to 20. But closer to 20, you've got to talk about the sources more, which is Livy, and it's not got to be a list of separate paragraphs about different things. It's got to be more blended. So let's look at it quickly here now. I'll go through this so you can write out something yourself later on. Any question that asks an historian to compare any of the early Roman kings has a serious flaw. None of these kings actually existed in the way they are portrayed in the sources. Livy, the source, was writing about these kings hundreds of years later and had few original sources. He was simply trying to explain to the Romans of his time, the 1st century BC, how Rome had developed in the way it had. He used the legendary 7 kings to explain different things about Roman character and institutions. Therefore, any question about the qualities of these kings tell us more about Rome in 60 BC than it does about Rome 500 years earlier. Yeah, this is the sort of things I want you to talk about. Livy, talk about the truth here, how these kings don't really exist. It's just a fairy story, a cautionary tale, a guidance for the future. Then you write a bit about Romulus. In the sources, Romulus is portrayed as a godlike hero who created many institutions that helped make Rome great, like the Senate, the orders, the legions, democracy. At the end of his life, he is portrayed in some sort of tyrannical, but in most he achieves apotheosis, becomes a god. By contrast, you're comparing them. Tarquinius Superbus is portrayed as a villain. He takes the throne by murdering the previous king, enslaves the plebeians, and to complete his construction plans, murders political opponents, goes everywhere without armed guards, and does not ask for advice from the Senate. In fact, he forbids anyone from having any meetings at all. Clearly, the point of these stories is to have these two kings as opposites, not similar in any real way. They both are accused of being tyrants, but Tarquin to a greater extent and throughout his reign. They both commit murder, but Romulus does it in a rage. Tarquin's murder of Servius is an act of cold-blooded assassination. In conclusion, the stories of these two mythical kings and their qualities do not suffer comparison. Romulus is the hero of early Roman history and was revered and worshipped throughout the whole of Roman history. On the other hand, Tarquinius Superbus was hated as a tyrant and came to embody everything the Romans later hated about kings. A very different sort of essay that will get you more marks because you're blending the comparisons. You're not doing so much separate paragraphs. It's not a list, it's a discussion.